Thank you for clicking in too. Explore the far-reaching impacts of the choices we make, one conversation at a time. This is the Ripple Effect. Thank you for joining us. Today we want to talk to Councilman Ed Danko. We want to talk to him about Amendment 1 that's going to be on our ballot here in November. It's important to everybody in Palm Coast to go ahead and understand a little bit more information about this, because it's going to go ahead and give the power for them to make a lot of decisions with either public entities and organizations, or make decisions that you might not be aware of and do things with that. So with that, I want to turn over to the expert on this, which is the sitting councilman, and have him explain a little bit about what Amendment 1 is actually going to be, so you know what you're voting for. And with that, Danko, could you give us a little bit more information on that?
Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate being here. This morning I received a phone call from our city attorney about literally an hour ago, informing me that a lawsuit's been filed against the language that's going on the ballot. Now, I have not read the lawsuit, so I don't know what it specifically says, but I am opposed to the way this amendment was written. It is deceitful, it is dishonest, it doesn't tell you the truth, which a lot of these amendments that you see on a ballot can be very confusing. This one doesn't even explain what it's about, and I encourage everyone to read it. I don't have the copy in front of me, but before you vote yes on this charter amendment, you need to read it and ask yourself if you even understand what it's saying, because here's the bottom line. What it's asking you to do is give up your right as a citizen to vote on bonds. Now, presently, the city charter has a cap on bonds of $15 million with a requirement that they be paid back in 36 months. So that means any bonds that, and you would have to vote on those bonds presently. So that means if there was something on the ballot to replace water pipes and a bond amendment, and we were going to spend $15 million, you would know for certain that the city would have to pay that back. So we'd have to have some source of revenue to pay back that $15 million in 36 months. Well, what they want to do is take away that right of yours to vote and remove the $15 million cap, an unlimited amount, a blank check, and you wouldn't get to vote on any of these bond issues whatsoever. It would go straight to city council, which means out of 5 council people, 5, you only need 3 votes to pass something. That's a majority. So 3 people could decide to put you in debt for, let's say, $94 million to build a stadium in the westward expansion, which is what these bonds are really about. They're about Rayonier. They're about the westward expansion. Rayonier wants a stadium in the middle of the westward expansion, and they want the citizens of Palm Coast to pay for it through bonds. And there's no payback clause except to say in this language, future residents will be responsible for paying this back. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means your children. That means your grandchildren. That means you, if you're alive, when they want to be paid back. It's the most absurd, ridiculous thing I've ever seen. When it was first brought to council, we were under the impression, at least I was under the impression, that this was for Palm Coast, not Palm Coast 2.0, not the westward expansion. And I was in favor of bonds. We do have some old bones in the city of Palm Coast. We're aging. We do have infrastructure needs. We can't just keep going to the taxpayers. Right now, 92% of our funds are raised through ad valorem tax. Your home. You pay, citizens, you pay 92% of our taxes. We only have 8% coming from businesses. That's a business model that's going to fail unless we attract more businesses. But we have structural needs in the city. We have roads, we have street lights, we have water pipes, we have all sorts of things. We're at 100% capacity with our water treatment plant. We need a new water treatment plant. Over the weekend, last weekend, you all were asked not to use a lot of water because of the heavy rains we were having and the fact that our water treatment plant was, incapable of handling it. So we do need a water treatment plant because before long, they're going to be asking you not to flush your toilet, which doesn't make a lot of sense. You don't want to live in a place like that. But the bottom line is these bonds will allow the city to put you, your children, your grandchildren in an enormous amount of debt. And then at some point, it's going to have to be paid, and they're going to be coming up with special assessments and increasing your taxes, and they're bad. And again, I don't just call it Charter Amendment 1. I call them Alphen bonds. After our mayor, Alphen bonds, because he's been pushing it along with Councilman Clufus, and I don't know why, except I can only speculate. Him as a real estate agent might be making a lot of money in the westward expansion. I can't tell you that for certain, but I wouldn't be surprised.
What happened to the public-private partnership that was the original pitch back in February when with that feasibility study? Why is that financial option out the door?
Well, it's not. It's part of it is a public-private partnership, but we have that ability now under the city charter to do public-private partnerships. We just have to put it in front of the voter and get voter approval. And so that's not changing. It's already there. The excuse of doing this to give us the ability to have a public-private partnership is a phony excuse because we already have that ability. So, these bonds are, we don't want to go down this path. And at first when I thought this was just for Palm Coast, and I didn't realize what it was really for until after I had a meeting a week before the last election with Rayonier and their attorney. And I was blatantly told, we need this to pass because we need to build this $94 million stadium. And if the bonds don't pass, the builder of the stadium is going to walk away. And I'm like, okay, so who cares?
Well,
who's going to use – I don't think the Miami Dolphins are moving to Palm Coast. I haven't heard about the New York Jets changing their location. I mean, what are we going to do with this big stadium?
Yeah, we already have 25 fields. Why do we need another 20?
Right, and how are we going to make money on it?
Right, that feasibility study seemed to indicate that within the first year, we would $77 million and we'd be pumped back in the economy. That seemed a little bit high.
That seems like a real nice guesstimation, but there's no facts to back that up, and no wonder why the builder wouldn't use their money and invest in this. If it was such a great deal, why don't they use their money? Rayonier makes billions of dollars every year. They're like a $2 billion a year profit corporation, yet they're not reaching in their pocket for $94 million. The builder that they're hiring to do this stadium isn't forking over the money. If it's such a great business investment, why don't they do it? Instead, the city's going to do it, and our city staff is recommending it. Well, one thing I've learned about being in government is governments don't have a clue how to run a business. These people have never worked in business, and that's why they work for government. And a great example is our city golf course. Last year, our city golf course, Palm Harbor, lost $434,000. $434,000. That was a good year for them because pretty much every year they've been losing $1 million plus since the city took over that golf course.
What about the tennis court?
I don't know about the tennis court.
Okay.
But I know about the golf course, and I know about the golf course because every year we set new rates for the golf course. And so when we were looking at setting the rate, our interim city manager said, the golf course is breaking even. Well, that's good for a city-run business. So we didn't raise the rates that much. A couple dollars for residents, a few more dollars for Florida residents, and I think we raised it $7 for out-of-staters. So basically, you can come here and play our city golf course for the same amount of money or less than our two privately owned courses, Cypress Knolls and Pine Lakes. We're competing against two private golf courses. And I think it's like $38, $36, something like that to play. Now, you go up to New York or Connecticut, you're going to pay $200. You go over to the hammock and you stay out at the hammock, it's like $400. And here we are competing against two of our private golf courses. Well, our private golf courses cannot afford to lose $434,000. They'd be out of business. We've already experienced Matanzas and their golf course. They went out of business, walked away with a tax lien. All right, now a developer has bought the tax lien and they're building homes out there. And that's what would happen if Cypress Knolls or Pine Lakes went out of business. They would walk away. They'd leave the tax lien, and we would then be stuck with another golf course, and all of the property values around those homes in the W section or the E section would decline dramatically, just like they did up in Matanzas. So we would lose money. I'm in favor of selling this golf course. Let free enterprise compete against free enterprise, not running a city business that can just lose money and stay in business. What's next? Do we have a city bowling alley?
Is it even proposed to do this?
To do what?
To go ahead and sell this golf course off?
I'm hoping the next council, because our council is up in November 19th, so we don't have much time here. I'm hoping the next city council, whoever gets elected, will take a look at this golf course and say, we have to unload this thing.
What's the process in order to get this on the voting block?
Well, it's the city council could decide we're going to sell the golf course. They would then put it out to bid. You have to go through a bidding process. Mm-hmm. And if there was any interested parties, and I don't know if there's anyone out there that even wants to buy this golf course, but golf courses can be very profitable if run properly. Hopefully an organization would come in and make a bid for whatever this golf course is worth. I'm guessing it's probably worth $2 or $3 million. That's just one I've heard estimate-wise. But they would do their homework before obviously bidding on it. And hopefully the city could bring in an additional few million into its coffers and, more importantly, stop the bleeding. Right now, we're voting next Wednesday, 5:15 at City Hall. 5:15 at City Hall. Why not 6 o'clock? Why not 9 a.m. like we normally have? Quite frankly, our city staff doesn't really want the public to know. They don't want you coming out there saying, wait a second, don't raise our taxes. So let's do it at 5:15 in the afternoon and confuse the hell out of everyone. But regardless, at 5:15 this coming Wednesday, we will be voting on the final budget. I want a full millage rate rollback. I don't want you to pay 1 penny more next year than you paid this year in taxes. But staff wants to increase your taxes. And apparently, from the first vote we have, and we had to do 2 votes on this, the first vote, apparently, the rest of city council, including our mayor, wants a tax increase because they love tax increases. They're tax and spend liberals. They would love to have put a 10% franchise fee on your electric bill. I managed to stop that by getting the public to pack City Hall 2 nights in a row, and we killed that stupid idea. Because the last thing you need under Bidenomics is a 10% increase on your electric bill coming from government. The last thing you need now is a tax increase. We've all been hurt by the price of gas, the price of food, the price of your home insurance, your car insurance, all of that. Everything has gone through the roof under Biden and Harris. And the last thing we need in Palm Coast is a tax increase. So what we need to do is cut $2 million from our existing budget of $400 and something odd million. I think we could find $2 million, but they don't want to make any cuts whatsoever. That's another thing I've learned about bureaucrats. They just like to keep hiring their friends and not make any cuts and dumping on us, the taxpayers. So I'm hoping, if you're listening, come out to City Hall Wednesday, 5:15 in the evening, and public comment. Let the city council know you don't want a tax increase. Let them know. Now, Kloufis won't be back. He lost his race for county commissioner. Alphen was solidly defeated. He only got 18% of the vote. I mean, I knocked on a lot of doors this election, over 5,000 doors. And normally the complaint I would expect to hear is our swales. Mm-hmm. No, it was our mayor. And the battle cry was anybody but Alphen. So here this guy gets 18% of the vote. Yet his final act, he wants to put these bonds down your throat and he wants to raise your taxes. Please come out and say enough is enough.
I do have a question about the millage rate and so forth.
Sure.
Doesn't this go into the general fund? And the general fund pays for like our police and our roads?
It goes into everything. It goes into everything. Yes, we pay for roads, we pay for police, we pay for fire, we pay for everything out of that tax increase, or out of your ad valorem taxes. But the point is, we could cut $2 million. Right now, we have a public relations department, $800,000. $800,000 for our little PR department that does press releases. And they do a lot of self-licking ice cream cone videos, praising themselves, telling you how wonderful they are. They're so wonderful. Look at this video we just made. I mean, we could cut that department from 8 people down to 3 people. The county does it with 2 people. I spent my career as a journalist, all right? If you need me to write a press release, I don't even have to know what the subject is. You tell me the subject, give me a few facts, and I can pound that out in 15 minutes or less. I mean, I don't need an $800,000 budget to write city press releases. They're not that complex.
And
Who's
one more
even
thing, I don't want to skip over this. What's going on with the Hyder?
Kathy Hyder resigned.
No, but with respect to getting the right people on the ballot, and
Right.
if that's going to go through.
Well, it's got to go through. We have to appoint somebody. It was too late to do an election, and a lot of folks don't understand that. But if we had put it on the ballot, because of the date that the ballot has to be printed by, because there's absentee ballots that go overseas first, and then to folks who request them, you have to request one now. The ballot had to be printed up. We would not have been able to do that as an election because, number one, because of our charter rules, candidates have an option. You either get so many signatures on a petition to get on the ballot, or you pay a certain amount of money. And it's not a chump change amount. It's several $1,000s. So because of the time frame, there was no time for anyone to do ballots, so any candidate that wanted to be on the ballot would have to be in a financial position of writing a check for that few $1,000s, whatever the amount is. So we felt that was kind of unfair. And also in our charter, because of the way it's written, it's our responsibility then to pick that replacement. So we had candidate interviews last week. Mm-hmm. I think there were 11 or 12 applicants. I think one did not show up. Two did not show up for the interview. There are people that I've already written off. I got into a big battle with our attorney. I don't know if you heard it or not. Yep. Our attorney tried to equate appointing someone to a political position with HR hiring someone to go on staff. That doesn't equate. This is a political decision. So I began by asking the first candidate, what's your party affiliation? Are you Republican, Democrat, liberal, socialist, tax and spend liberal, fiscal conservative? Tell me about you. And our attorney interrupted me. And he started trying to give me this nonsense about this being, an HR hire. And I said, this is not an HR hire. This is a political appointment. When the governor... And the governor is going to have to appoint someone to our school board. Sally Hunt resigned yesterday from school board, I hear. Mm-hmm. Our governor will make that appointment. If you don't think our governor's not looking at your party affiliation, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I would love to sell you, real cheap. Of course he is. When a senator or a congressman resigns, a governor makes that appointment. That's his right under the state law. He's not going. A Republican governor is not going to appoint a Democrat. A Democratic governor is not going to appoint a Republican. They're going to appoint along party affiliation. So our attorney started interrupting me, and then our mayor wanted to get a consensus, and I said, my ass, a consensus on freedom of speech? Not on my watch.
Did any of those candidates actually answer the question?
Some did. And those would be the candidates I will be considering. The ones that refuse to answer, as far as I go, they're not going to get my vote. And I disqualified one right off the bat, Darrell Boyer. Nice guy. I know Darrell. He ran for State House. He lost. He was very upset because a candidate parachuted in at the last moment, a guy from Miami. Nice guy, Sam Greco, fellow former Navy officer, like Sam. But he parachuted in from Miami, took up residency here, and Darrell complained that this guy was an outsider, a carpetbagger, and then Darrell does the same thing. He moves after the August 20th primary where he lost. 5 days later he moves into the R section, and I told Darrell before he came to council, and every council person can speak with anybody who was interested in that position. Actually encouraged to have a conversation. I told Darrell, I said, I can't vote for you. I said, you're doing exactly what your opponent did, and now you're him. You're a carpetbagger. And I said, I'm sorry, you just can't move into a house that mommy and daddy owns and want to be on city council. Not going to give you my support. So I immediately struck him from my list, too. We do have a few good candidates there. I'm very impressed with the general who has applied. He worked under our Secretary of Defense in the Trump administration. He actually used the same desk that Oliver North used. But this is a very, very smart man, a very dedicated person. He has experience at the highest level, the White House. He also served on school board here for a period of time. So this guy has experience from both ends of the spectrum. And I have to tell you, I got a call yesterday from one of his references. The man was in Europe. He called me while in Europe. Former Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller called me directly to express his support for the general. Well, that's one hell of a reference as far as I'm concerned. So obviously this guy's on the top of my list.
And this is going to be a 2-year appointment then?
This will be a 2-year appointment till the next election. So in a sense, 2 years till the next November election, the next August primary. And if a person who's appointed wants to run, they have the ability to run for that office. They could serve their 2 years and then decide they don't want to run. That's up to them. But I think we're lucky to have, especially the general, we have a few good candidates. So we're lucky to have people step forward. Let me tell you, it's hard to find good candidates. It's hard to find bad candidates. That most people don't want to run for these offices.
And there's a lot of turnover.
Well, sure. Yeah. You don't get paid a lot of money on city council. You know, it was $9,500 when I first was seated a year. All right. We upped it to $24,000. Now, I got to be honest with you. I can go get a job at McDonald's for $18 an hour and make that. Probably make a little bit more. All right. Oh, the only difference is at McDonald's, all I'm doing is putting fries, handing you fries, handing you a burger, handing you a Coke, and I'm not being bashed in the local media. I'm not getting complaints from citizens, on my cell phone. I'm not having people approach me on the street and say, I didn't like that hamburger that you gave me yesterday. But so you run for one of these offices and you open yourself up to the public.
Well,
and if you care, you deal with their issues. I mean, my phone rings all the time. And I always return my calls. I hand out my personal cell phone to people. When I hand you my card, my personal cell phone's on it. And if you have an issue or concern and you need me to come out and look at it, I do it. I can't always fix all the problems, but I think it's important that you go out and you meet with people and you take a look at their situation. And if you can help them, you try to help them. So it's hard to get people to run for office. And
especially at $9,600.
Yeah, so we upped it to 24. It's still hard to get people to run for office for that amount of money. It's much easier to run for county commissioner, where the salary is set by the state, and I believe it's $70,000 now, and you have a fraction of the issues that we have in Palm Coast.
Well, the problem with that initially was that people saw it as a 150% increase.
Well, sure, that is the problem. The media took it and twisted it and lied about it. And yes, 150% increase. Oh my God, that's so awful. Yeah, well, there hadn't been a raise in over 15 years.
And that study didn't help either, because they said they rated, they took same town, 115,000. They said, what are those guys getting paid? And it was right around 12,000.
Yeah. But regardless, I don't know what that other town deals with. I don't know what their officials deal with. All I know is this city council has not had a raise in over 15 years. 15 years. And I heard people say, well, you knew what the salary was when you took the job. Well, guess what? When you took your first job, you knew what the salary was too. What, you never got a raise after that? You never asked for a raise? You never expected a raise? You just lived with that, whatever it was when you first started 15 years ago? That's not the way life works.
True. Yeah. And I would have to say, too, you have to think that you're also getting this problem that we have where people are coming in for alternative reasons, right? So if you're not going to get paid for what you're doing, you're going to look for where you're going to get benefit from this actual position, probably. Maybe that's why we see that the city basically focuses on real estate, because we see a lot of people who are actually in city government tend to be in real estate and other aspects.
We've tend to have had a large majority of real estate agents. Now, I'm not saying real estate agents are bad. I mean, if you go to sell your house tomorrow, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? You're going to call a real estate agent, right? That's what you're going to call. You're going to call a real estate agent.
You just dated yourself, by the way. Just letting you know that.
Yeah, I know. Well, what can I say? But so there's nothing wrong with real estate agents. They help you buy and sell a home. That's fine. But they're then commercial agents. Well, they hopefully bring commercial to us.
But not on the planning and zoning board.
What's next? Then you can't have a car salesman. You can't have this. You can't have that. People have to make a living. Planning board doesn't get paid anything. So they bring a certain perspective to it. That's why you have more than one person. So I don't have any problem with that. I do have a problem if there's a person out there who will benefit directly from stuff we vote on. And that's why I'm very concerned about this westward expansion. I don't know if our mayor is going to benefit or not. I don't know, and I'm not accusing him of it. But it seems to me the way he's defending this charter amendment, is he Rayonier's Employee of the Month? I don't know. But it just seems like he probably has something to gain. And I think that, when you're in that situation, if you actually, and there's nothing wrong with that, you then just recuse yourself from any vote that involves that. So that way it's nice and clean and transparent.
And forgive me for saying, but I've never understood why the city has had this hard-on for this complex for the last 3 years. I didn't understand the necessity behind it. And actually, in the beginning, you were behind it as well.
Well, here's the thing. And this is hard to explain sometimes, but it needs to be. Property owners have rights. Whether you own a single lot, whether you own 500 acres, whether you own 25 acres, you own it. It's your property. You have every right to develop it. Now, Rayonier, they do lumber. They do forests. They do trees. But I guess they've discovered that with some of their operation, it might be more profitable to the shareholders to step in and do something else with it. It's their property. They have every right to develop it. They don't have a right to expect the taxpayers to put the burden on us. If it's your property, let's just put it this way. Say the three of us bought 25 acres 15 years ago. And we wake up today and we're like, my God, everybody wants to move to Florida. They love our weather. They love our politics. They love our beaches. They love our low taxes. They love our lifestyle. And so we look at each other and we say, what are we going to do with those acres that we bought 15 years ago? And we decide, not somebody else, we decide what we're going to do with it. So we decide we're going to build townhouses. Now, it may be zoned commercial, but nobody has expressed an interest to buy it for commercial property. There's no interest because this is not a very business-friendly community right now. We have a bad reputation, especially when we've had some politicians use that word boycott, which scares away investors like you wouldn't believe. Boycott is the kiss of death. I'm not going to put a business in a city that wants to boycott, because I could put a business there and 2 years later, we're going to have a boycott, against your business. Dollar General, for instance. We went through that with Melissa Holland, So boycott's a bad word. But anyway, we decide we're going to ask for zoning change because nobody wants to put commercial there, but we have people that want to build townhouses. We have every right to ask for it, and we have every right to expect it. It's our property. If they didn't do that zoning change, if the planning board and the city council said no, we would sue. And we wouldn't just sue for the value of that property. Let's say we could have made $25 million off the townhouses. That's what we would sue for. And we would win. The Supreme Court ruling is called Burt Harris. This has already been in the Supreme Court and back. Well, I can tell you this city could not handle one $25 million lawsuit. So, yes, we do have property rights, and this city is going to grow, and it's going to expand, and you're going to have more traffic, but hopefully we attract more businesses, and your taxes stay low. Mm-hmm. And, I had one person tell me, I don't want any more traffic. I don't want any more development. But I want jobs for my grandkids, and I'd like them all, and can we get a Ruth Chris Steakhouse? Well, I said, I'm sorry, I don't have a magic wand with me today. Maybe tomorrow. I mean, you can't cherry pick.
And it almost seems like
that.
the town doesn't know what it is, whether it's a retirement community or is it a burgeoning city. You can't have both.
Well, it was a retirement community when ITT first arrived, and then they left. And then we incorporated and as a city, and now we're a growing city, and we're going through all of what a growing city goes through. But I don't know where you guys are from originally. Maybe you're from Florida.
Chicago.
Where in Chicago?
Downtown.
Okay, I lived out in Lansing for 2 years.
Know it well.
But the bottom line is I went home to New York 2 months ago, where I grew up in Westchester County. And I had not been back in 20 years since the death of my parents.
Must have been a shock.
The change I saw, I didn't recognize the place. That's what happens. It just, things change. And if you're not there every day and you show up 20 years later, you see it.
10 years.
Yeah. And Palm Coast has changed. People tell me, well, there used to be just one traffic light and this and that. And it's like, yeah, well, sorry. I had people complain to me that they had to stop at 3 traffic lights, on their way to wherever they were going. 3 traffic lights. In Chicago, I used to commute in every day from Lansing to downtown Chicago.
2 hours.
Oh, God. And when I lived in Washington, D.C., I mean, the traffic there. When I lived in Dallas, Texas, the traffic there. Atlanta, Georgia, that's probably the worst traffic I've ever seen. To where if you get a few snowflakes in a place like Atlanta, Georgia, or Washington, D.C., you're 3 hours commuting home. Your 1 hour goes to 3 hours over some snowflakes. So when people complain to me about a couple of traffic lights, I almost want to laugh.
Well, and when they do complain about the traffic lights, what they don't complain about is the equity they have in their home when they bought it for $150 and now it's $350.
Yes, exactly. So life changes, things happen. We are going to grow. There are candidates out there now, one in particular running for mayor, who's telling people he's going to stop growth. He's going to come in. He's told folks that he's going to rezone any residential land to commercial, as if that's going to make companies show up and build commercial. You make false promises as a politician. They come back and they bite you in the ass. Sooner or later, someone comes back to you and says, well, you promised this and you did that instead. You get caught. Mm-hmm. So I avoid making promises. And on growth, I've told people the truth. And, whether they believe me or not, well, apparently 39 people did not believe me. And I lost my election to county commissioner by 39 votes. And part of that also was because I know the local blogger managed to get 300-plus people to switch parties from Democrat to Republican to vote in our Republican primary, which to me is election fraud. I mean, it's the same thing. It's legal, but, boy, it's certainly not morally right. But regardless, I've always told people the truth. And if they didn't like it, I can't help them.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's honorable. It's very hard to find people that actually tell the truth nowadays. One thing I want to go back to is the actual impact fees. Now, we see that with developers now, they have impact fees that go to the actual owner in a way of like additional taxes at the end of the year. They got to pay on those impact fees. I thought those was originally supposed to be the developers.
Well, wait a second. What do you mean? What do you mean go to the original owner?
So the original owner was supposed to go ahead. The developer was supposed to pay an impact fee for the roads, the electricity, everything.
It depends on the property. Mm-hmm. I could own a piece of. Let's go back to the acreage that we bought 15 years ago.
Right.
Okay. We could be the developer of that property, or we could sell that property once the zoning was changed to a developer, to a builder, and we take our profit. The bottom line is once you put the shovel in the ground, you pay your impact fees. Whether it's us as the owners of the property or the builder, doesn't matter. Once the shovel hits the ground, impact fees, you start paying impact fees. Those impact fees obviously have to go to specific things. They go to police, fire, they go to roads, they go to park and recreation, so on and so forth. They're all for new stuff. You can't use them to repave a road. You use them to build a road. You can't use them to fix the splash pad out at Holland Park. You can use them to build a splash pad, which I was opposed to. I wasn't even in favor of us refixing it, but the attorneys were insisting that if we had any chance of recouping our money, we had to go into court and say, here's the bills, here's what we paid to repair the damage, or we didn't have much of a battle in court. So I went along with the legal argument. And a lot of folks, Grandma and Grandpa, they want to take little Sally and little Charlie to the splash pad. My personal feeling is half the people in the city own pools. So if you don't have one, make friends with your neighbor. Or we have a big splash pad. It's called the Atlantic Ocean. Take your kids to the beach and keep an eye on them so they don't get hurt, But regardless of that, impact fees, builders pay a lot of impact fees. We just increased their impact fees on water, and we actually increased it. And we didn't increase your fees on water this year, although Mayor Alphen, this was unbelievable to me. This is politics 101, but he's not that bright. Mayor Alphen actually told Flagler Live that he would vote for a water bill increase after he was elected. I couldn't believe it. I mean, really? Gee, well, obviously that's why maybe one of the reasons he only got 18% of the vote. He's not that bright. But regardless, though, builders pay a lot of impact fees. And let's just say we took our acreage that we bought 15 years ago, and we're going to do a gated community. We decide our townhouses will be a gated private community with an HOA. Well, we would be putting our own roads in, be responsible for maintaining them. We would be putting our own water pipes in. We would be putting our infrastructure in, but yet we would still have to pay all those impact fees to the city. So that's a big bonus for the city, because the city's not even dealing with those roads or anything in those gated communities. So builders pay a lot, and a lot of folks don't realize that. And the builders realize it because they've got to pass it along to the buyers of their homes. So it tacks on, about $25,000, $26,000 at least to any home in Palm Coast, whether it's in a gated community or a single lot. It's about $25,000, $26,000 of impact fees, and which also go to schools too. The school system gets a slice of that pie. So, it's part of growth, and it's part of what I think the public doesn't fully understand. I had people complain to me. They build a house on a lot, and they got 2 empty lots next to their house, and they don't want anyone building on those empty lots next to their house. All right, it's okay for you to build your house, but you don't want anybody building a house next to you. Well, the solution is buy the lot. If you're not willing to step up and buy the lot, you're going to have a neighbor. I mean, sorry, we can't just say you've arrived and now no one else can live here. But yet there are people that actually would like that. But I see all kinds of crazy things. You got people that live at the end of the runway over at the Flagler County Airport who complain about airplanes. I had one person bought a house on a golf course. I won't say which one. And right there on the golf course, and complained about the lawnmowers cutting the grass early in the morning. Well, when do you think they cut the grass? In the afternoon as the golfers are playing? I mean,
they have a cage over their lawnmowers so they don't get hit.
Yeah. I mean, you moved on to a golf course. That's like moving to the beach and complaining about the sand. It makes no sense to me.
What they would be complaining as well if that grass wasn't cut and it looked horrible, right?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
So I mean, you can't please everybody.
You can't please everyone.
So what's next for Councilman Danko?
Well, I don't know what's next for me. That's a good question. I haven't made any. I mean, first I'm going to fulfill my term to November 19th, and then I'm going to we're going to take a nice vacation over Christmas. Every year we go away for Christmas. That way we don't have to deal with kids and grandkids and family.
In the U.S. or overseas?
Last year we went to Vegas.
Okay.
The year before we went to Rome, Italy. I'm not sure. We're thinking Portugal this year might be a possibility. We're starting to just look into it now. But we're going to take a vacation.
Haiti's nice.
Haiti, yes, I've been to Haiti. Haiti is lovely.
Indonesia.
Haiti is, well, I mean, look, I hate to say it, but it's the biggest shithole on the planet. And if you've ever been there, it is just.
I was staying away from that.
It's sad. It's. You can go next door to the Dominican Republic, and there's nice resorts and everything. But Haiti, it's just been a horrible place. I feel so bad for the people everything they've been through and will continue to go through, and they've been ripped off by people like the Clinton Foundation, I mean, and others. And it's a horrible, horrible place. And I've been to a lot of third world countries as a journalist, but Haiti is absolutely the worst. So no, we won't be vacationing in Haiti.
Okay.
Probably
Indonesia?
get a good deal, but no, thank you.
Have you ever been to Indonesia?
I've not been to Indonesia.
Beautiful country, beautiful food. Everything's really nice.
Yeah, that's one place I haven't been. I've been a lot of other places. So many places I've lost count. And the problem is when you go as a journalist, you fly in, you cover whatever the story is. You don't get to really see a lot. You just simply don't get to see a lot. The first time I went to Belgium, I did not get to see a lot. I was there covering President Reagan, dating myself again, but at a NATO meeting, because that's where NATO is headquartered. So since then, I've been back 3 times on my own as a tourist, and I had a lovely time. Outside, there's a little town called Bruges, and it is it's like Camelot. Beautiful canals.
You do know there's a
beautiful
movie
churches.
called In Bruges, right?
I have not seen that
Oh,
movie.
you got to see it.
I have not. But there was a George Clooney movie about an army unit that rescued a statue of the Virgin Mary from the Germans. I don't know if you guys saw that movie. I forget the title of it. But that statue is in a church in Bruges. And it when I first went there, you could walk in, didn't cost you any money. You could walk right up to the statue. You couldn't touch it because it was beyond arm's reach, but it was just slightly beyond arm's reach. And now, unfortunately, and the movie probably had a lot to do with it, they charge an admission. It's behind plexiglass. You can only get so close.
Well, as you're saying, in the movie, it appeared to be a beautiful town. Is it just that way?
It is. It's Camelot.
Wow.
And whether you go in the summer or the winter, it's magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take a train out of Brussels. It's about a 60-minute train ride. They have a bar car on that train. I know that because I spent some time in that bar car coming home or going up. Or you can drive. You can rent a car. Very easy to rent a car. But it's a beautiful place.
Well, you seem to have a deep passion for politics. Would you ever consider running for another seat?
Well, you never say never, as Sean Connery said in that Bond movie. I only lost by 39 votes. But I just haven't decided. One door closes, several doors may open.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to finish my term, take a vacation, come back home, and decide what I want to do next. And I will see what the opportunities are and then proceed from there. And whether or not I run for another office, I like serving the public. I like fighting the battles. I like being a voice for the people. But do you get tired of the abuse? Yes, you get tired of that. But fortunately, I do have a thick skin.
And you can dish it out. We've seen it.
I can dish it out. And I got to tell you, I'm not, people aren't, you didn't elect me to be nice. And you elected me to make statements and and take positions. And just because the liberal media doesn't like my position or some middle of the road, politician didn't like my decision, I could really care less.
Yeah, it seems the media likes you a lot, actually. The local media.
Flagler Live doesn't.
Well, I think I think Flagler Live actually likes me because their readership cranks up whenever they have a headline saying that I did something that the liberals don't like. So I think
When
it's
you boycotted them, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't like that. But it's like I can tell you that the left-wing liberal mainstream media loves Trump.
Wait, say that one more time?
The left-wing liberal media loves
make money.
Trump. They make money, okay? I mean, yes, they don't like their... Look, journalists are basically liberal. Now, when I started a long time ago, there were more liberals and conservatives at NBC Nightly News or the CBS Evening News, 2 places I worked. But back in the beginning, people tried to keep their personal politics to themselves, made an effort, actually, to keep their own personal views out of a story. That changed over time. When I was at CNN, I can tell you it was so left-wing liberal. November 1st, 2016, I walked out several days before the presidential election. I just had had enough. And I think I was 61 years old at the time, and I just said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. We had just built a house on Hatteras Island, a beach house, and if you've ever been to the Outer Banks of North Carolina,
No.
it's a sandbar that's 25 miles off the coast. It's surrounded by water on both sides. It's very thin. It's a beautiful place to vacation. We had built a beach house in the middle of Hatteras Island in a town called Avon, and I just walked out of CNN and I said, I don't want to do this anymore, and left a lot of money on the table, but we didn't need the money. And so we moved to Hatteras Island just to get away from that left-wing liberal media. And then after 2 years, I discovered you just can't sit on a beach and drink beer every day. You get a little bored. So I went back into the military. I joined the United States Coast Guard. We had a Coast Guard base on Hatteras Island. And then we had four boats, 4 vessels. So that was fun. And then I also joined the volunteer fire department. And I have to tell you, unless you've put water on a fire, you have no idea how hard it is to put water on a fire. You are in there in your full gear. It could be 40 degrees outside. In 15 minutes, you are sweating and dehydrating like you wouldn't believe. I have such admiration for firefighters and what they do. It is a tough, difficult job. I also discovered it is a young man's job, not an old man's job, although I did learn how to drive a fire truck, which was a lot of fun. But I have to, but basically I just couldn't sit on a beach and drink beer, in the meantime. So moved to Palm Coast.
And start a podcast.
Well, no, moved to Palm Coast and sat on the beach and drink beer for a year and said, I got to find something to do in my life. And that's when I decided to run for office. Nobody knew who I was. I started, I literally started over a year and a half or so out from the primary, knocking on doors, meeting voters.
Were you familiar with Palm Coast politics before you got here?
Nope, didn't have a clue. I had no idea about Palm Coast politics. I learned my first year. I paid attention. I learned a bit what was going on. I saw things I liked. I saw things I didn't like. But I decided to make that run for office. So I had to get my name out there. I had to establish a brand. People had to know me. So I knocked on that first campaign. I knocked on 10,000 doors. And I knew how many doors I knocked on because of the amount of door hangers I had printed up. That I would either hand you or put on your door. So I had a very accurate count of how many homes I knocked on. And that was back before I did not have the app. There's an app now where I can go to any street and I can pull up voters. And it tells me if they're Republican, if they're Democrat, if they're super voters, those people that vote in every election, primary and general. It's a beautiful app. When I did it, I had to take the printed material from the supervisor of election office and map out my route the night before every day. So which 100 homes am I going to tomorrow? And I'd have to pick a street. And I literally started from my house and circled out and just kept circling out wide circles.
This is definitely not something you do just for $9,000 a year.
Not unless you really want to do it.
What about for $24,000?
Listen, 24th, like I said, you can go to McDonald's. I think they're paying $17, $18 an hour, right? I mean, they are, thanks to Bidenomics.
So what
which
were
is
you?
why everything, the dollar menu there, nothing is $1 on the dollar menu at McDonald's anymore. It's $1.99. But if you go to the dollar store, nothing is $1. It's $1.25 or $1.30. In the last 3.5 years, this is what's happened to our country. This is what's happened. The price of gas went through the roof. There's a reason why. The Biden administration doesn't like gas. They like electric cars.
Yeah, not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
No
that was one of the
infrastructure.
issues that we had at City Hall. We had this chief sustainability officer. And our former city manager, Denise Bevan, who I voted to fire, brought this person on. And she wanted us to put free electric chargers up all across the city. And she actually said at a city council meeting, wouldn't it be wonderful? Everybody using this free electricity, they'll have more money to spend at our local businesses. And I had to remind her that the gas station is one of our local businesses. They employ people. They sell products. That's part of our local economy. She was too stupid to know that. Well, she's gone. She was terminated. along with Denise Bevan, who is very liberal in my view. Hopefully we will find a good city manager this time. We were in the process of it the last time when Mayor Alphen somehow managed to get 3 other votes. How he did that without violating sunshine, I don't know. But he had 3 votes in his pocket, and in the middle of our search for a city manager, he springs up Denise Bevan. And I'm like, really? And then I looked at her. She was our acting city manager after Morton had to resign, after Holland had to resign. And I looked at her. I said, you've told us you don't want this. She's like, I want this. I could see Alphen had all the votes, so I went along with it, just hoping that she would be decent. Turns out she wasn't, and Alphen actually had to make the motion to terminate her. Cleaning up your own mess, I think it's called, because she was horrible as a city manager. But she's gone. That's another thing about David Alphen. I'm sorry, I'm not a big fan of this mayor.
Seems that way.
I think he's been the worst mayor in the history. It makes me long for Melissa Holland. Melissa, if you're out there, I miss you, Melissa. You weren't as bad as I thought you were compared to this guy. I mean, this guy is just...
Quite an endorsement.
Yeah, this guy is just terrible.
So you won't be voting for him?
Well, I if he ever runs again, I'd be shocked. I mean, I lost by 39 votes, okay? It's pretty much a 50-50 split, all right? And those are just the voters that vote in a primary. Those are not the majority of voters that will be coming out in November. So, you know, it's I've got an opportunity. If I decide to run again, I could certainly run again. And I know how to run a campaign, and, you know, it wouldn't be that hard for me to step up and do it again.
This wasn't like losing by 5,000 votes.
Not like Alphen. No. Yeah.
And it's also like you've already proven you like to do the work. You put in the work.
I do like doing the work. I don't like being bored. I don't want to sit around the house and do nothing. You know, so you have to find something to do in life. The moment you stop doing something, you die. So I like staying busy. So something will happen. We'll just see. We'll just wait and see what the good Lord brings to me.
We're looking forward to seeing what things you bring along with you and what you do in the future as well. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap that up because I know you're busy. I know you have things to do. We want to thank you guys for watching, and we hope that you enjoyed the content that we had and that we covered. We covered the Amendment 1 and why it's important.
Alphen bonds. That's what I'm calling them.
Or what?
It's on your website. No Alphen bonds.
Yep, no Alphen bonds.
All right. So, Mr. Ed Danko, current council member of the Palm Coast City and vice mayor, I want to go ahead and mention, calls it Alphen bonds. And this is basically going to mean that they're going to be able to vote in a way that is going to cost you money and you won't have any say in it anymore. So you want to really consider this amendment, whether it's working in your benefit or not. We can understand that there might be some limitations with the current work, but they can rewrite that to a proper way that it works out in both benefits. We hope that you watch this video, that you subscribe, like, and that you watch current and future videos as well. Thank you so much for coming.